Hey, what's going on everybody? This is Mike Kollin at MikeKollin.com. Okay, so in this video I'm going to share a couple of my personal truths. Probably weaknesses might be another word. And I'm also going to share what my course is about, especially the course for why men just don't get it. So one example I like to give is I was in a grocery store. This was about 14 years ago, and I was standing behind a couple. I think they were a little bit older than me. I think I was in my late 30s. They were probably 44, 45, something like that. And she was they were discussing something fairly in depth, and it was important to her. And he was nodding like, and he said something, and the minute he says, like, oh, he doesn't understand. So I realized right away, it's like, oh, she's going to be pissed in about 5 or 6 hours when this all is supposed to evolve or happen. So I almost handed them my business card, and I was going to say, hey, would you guys like to talk outside? I'd like to share something with you, but kind of bit my tongue because I didn't want to get in the middle, because like, here I am, a stranger, I could only imagine, like, who the hell's this guy? So I had to kind of bite my tongue and be like, yep, they're going to have that typical argument where she was like, I don't understand, we just had this conversation. He's like, yeah, you said this and it meant that. She's like, no, I said this and it means that. And he'll go, no, it doesn't, you said this and it means that. And they will go back and forth. And they will argue to death, and this is why men and women get angrier and angrier at you. Your relationships are, sorry to say it, but your relationships, they're doomed from the very beginning, and there's a reason why. And that's what my course, Why Men Just Don't Get It, what it's all about, because there is a new answer, and no one out there is teaching this, just me. You know, the lady at the hotel Embassy Suites, she gave me such a good price on the room to rent it. And it was because we had a 25-minute conversation about my course. In 25 minutes, I had opened her eyes to all the problems that she had been struggling with in her marriage. And she literally looked up, she goes, you're literally talking about my entire life dealing with the opposite sex. I'm like, yeah. I go, we're different. Now, we went a little bit more in depth, but one thing that I brought up is I looked at her, this was about at the 30-minute mark, and I said, when I first walked in, you asked me what I did for a living and what the presentation was about. When I told you, a male, a guy, said, oh, I specialize in communication between men and women, I go, you literally cringed like, oh, God, here we go, another guy who thinks he understands communication. She goes, no, I did. Yeah, you did. It's okay. I understand. Because men don't know that they don't know. Okay, so here I come along. Now, because the typical experience with a woman is a guy's like, oh, I know how to communicate well. And he's talking about crossing the T, dotting the I, making sure you don't do a comma splice in proper English. Or whatever language, you speak in your culture, in your country. I go, but women are not talking about logical, proper left brain communication. They're talking about the hidden internal right brain, the mentally stimulating and emotionally fulfilling, more meaningful communication. And she kind of lit up, and her eyes lit up a little bit. And when I said that, now right now, if you're a male, you're probably going, said what? Guys, there's a hidden language that women speak all the time. It's a language within the language. Okay. So I said, when I first said this to you, you literally rolled your eyes like, okay, here we go again. Because I've heard men say to women, like, because women will put on their dating sites, and when they meet a guy, yeah, I'm looking for a guy who knows how to communicate, knows how to express himself. And guys, they go into the left logical brain. Oh, I know how to communicate. And women are like, oh, God, that's not what we mean. So to the men that are listening right now, just so you know, I've been speaking this language this entire video and every single video that you've listened to, okay? Now, it's a language that the left brain can't, it's like your sonar system, your radar system, it can't even pick up on it, let alone understand it. But The course Crack the Female Code will teach you how to open up to your right brain. And then I'll teach you the hidden language. There's an actual language within the language. And then there's some patterns where you have to learn how to process in what's called the indirect way. When you learn how to communicate and process in this language in the indirect way, and there's a couple more things to it, all of a sudden a whole new world with women will open up. A level of clarity and understanding will open up in a way that all of a sudden you're going to look at women like, wait a minute, they've been speaking this language my entire life. Like, yeah, they have. So for those of you who have taken the Tony Robbins courses on relationship, read the books, you know, like I started reading when I was, I think I was 16 or 17 years old. I read Leo Buscaglia's books. Now, that was way back in the 80s. I think that was around 85, 86, 87. And I just continued on there, and then I got into psychology in college, and then I got into advanced, you know, like courses like NLP and Ericksonian hypnosis, etc. And all of a sudden, a whole new world started opening up to me. So, again, for those of you who've read those books and read the Men Are From Mars books and any of the books out there, any of the courses, any of the seminars, when you walk into this course, you're going to realize, wait, this is different. Nobody's teaching this. This is something that was, well, it's an amalgamation of Eastern-minded stuff. So the Western mind is the left brain. The Eastern mind is the right brain. So some of these things are things that I learned from energy healing. Some of these are I learned from Buddhist monks on how to be conscious, etc., etc. And that opened up a whole new world. Like being very conscious of how women process changed everything for me. All of a sudden, I was getting along with women. All of a sudden, I was the guy that the women were talking to. And I don't mean that, yeah, it was romantic, but just like at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, I had a group of women. It was probably about 20, 25 women in a half circle just engaging it with me in this really in-depth conversation about my course and about the internal language, the hidden language, you know, how we process differently, etc. And it just dawned on me like, wow, I went from that guy that couldn't get a date, couldn't carry a conversation for more than hello, you're pretty, my name's Mike, you know, to just carrying on conversations. And again, this wasn't a romantic experience. It was just carrying on. It was just like, because before talking to women was such a foreign, it was such a foreign experience. It was intimidating. It was terrifying. It was because women would get mad and frustrated and upset all the time, and I didn't understand why. Now I'm very aware of it. And it's a really interesting experience to, as a male, to walk through the world with this ability. It's like walking to a foreign country and you speak their language fluently. So let's go back to the couple in the grocery store. I'm back in that day. In fact, I almost handed them my business card. The big bold on the front was the love translator, because I literally speak both languages and I translate the languages for couples. So, all right. So there's something I want to say before that. Here's the deal. Women, you're very aware, and you're right, you're correct. We are speaking two different languages. They are foreign languages, literally. The external language, the left male brain language, which is the linear language. Now, linear just means it goes in a line, L-I-N-E, line, A-R, linear, okay? The A-R is added just to be fluid in the language, okay? So it just means it goes in a line, or it's a system that goes in a line. So the male language is the external, which means outside of the body, language. It goes from his forehead or his right eye and it goes out. So this is why a lot of times when men look at you, they'll laser beam you from their right eye to your right eye. Now what this means is he's in his left brain. So when a male's in his right eye, and you can see that focus there, that's how I know when a man's in his left brain. Because the left brain crosses over through the nerves to the right side of the body and vice versa, okay? The right brain connects with the left side of the body. So what this does is it forces you to go into your left brain, because men do what I call lock on. They lock down and they laser beam you. And so guys, whenever you take a woman out on an expensive dinner or date or any date and they're like, you know, I got to go home, I've got a headache. They literally have a headache because you gave it to them. That laser beam thing is not romantic at all. It turns women off, and it forces her into her forehead, which gives her a headache. It technically puts her in her logical left brain, and it tightens up her forehead. So she literally does have a headache from you. Now, right now, I can hear 100 women going, oh my God, I've tried to explain this to my husband or my boyfriend or whoever. It's like men just do this late. Not only that, but then they'll lean forward and they will enter your, they invade your space. It's intrusive. Now, men are like, what are you talking? Because to us, it's normal to lean forward into someone's space. This is how we connect. But to women, that's considered extremely rude because it's like you're literally invading her space. Now, the problem with being only in the left brain is you're oblivious to the right brain's world. Now, the right brain's world is not linear and in front. It's internal and expansive like a circle, okay? So women's awareness generally tends to be in their body and expands around them. Whereas men concentrate all that energy and put it up in their forehead and their right eye, and they laser beam out. Now, as I was talking to the lady at the hotel, she was really like, yeah, that's true, you know. And, but whenever, like, if a guy's listening, he's like, what are you talking about? Like, all of this stuff is very foreign. Because remember that the left brain, the right eye, is the oblivious eye. It blocks out 97% of reality. So it's completely unaware. The right brain is the self-aware brain. Now, a lot of women will say, I'm looking for a man who's self-aware. And men are like, what are you talking about? Because the right brain goes down into the body and connects with your 5 senses. So you physically feel it in your body. That's what's called being self-aware. Now, what I'm about to say, most men will think, oh, yeah, I get it. And they don't. Like, logically, they hear what you're saying, but physically, they don't get it at all. So men are intrusive. They invade people's space. They laser beam. They do all these things that they're completely unaware of. They're like, well, I don't understand. What do you mean laser beam? What do you? And every woman I've talked to, every woman, even when my goddaughter was 15 years old, she's like, oh, I hate it when men do that laser beam thing. It just hurts. Now, here's the deal. The course for men, Crack the Female Code course, it answers all these problems by teaching him to drop down inside and be internal so he can learn to be like, oh, she's crossing her arms. Oh, yeah, that's another thing. Like, when men, like, lean forward, like at the cashier or at the bank teller, and they lean forward and lock on forehead to forehead, she leans back, crosses her arm, kind of turns away. I've even seen bank tellers look at other tellers for help. They'll get up and walk over, and then the other teller will, oh, hi, and they'll wave their arm, because you got to really be, like, obnoxious. You got to wave your arm at the guy, and he'll look, and then he pulls away a little bit. So men are probably listening, oh, I don't do that. Every client I've worked with for 30 years, oh, I don't do that. And then we go out in the coffee shop, and I have to record it on video. Otherwise, they won't believe me. And then when I show it to them, like, oh my God, I did that at every store we went to. Yep, you did it at the bookstore, you did it at the coffee shop, you did it at the restaurant, you did it every time you talk to a woman. And then they begin to realize, especially when we go through the right brain exercises, which is what the course, the emotional grounding class, is going to be all about. It brings him back inside his body. So yes, ladies, if you have a friend, a boyfriend, a husband, a brother, a cousin, a coworker who doesn't get it, bring him to the emotionally grounding technique course, and we will teach him how to be internal. This is a very foreign and odd experience for men. Now, women are like, why? See, the right brain is the female brain. You are born using it for women, okay? It's the internal brain. So to you, you're all about the internal world. You're like, I mean, you're born using this brain and perceiving the world from this perspective. It's just natural for you. For men, what's natural is the laser being external, you know, leaning forward, invading your space. They have no clue about the right brain way, but when they learn how to do it, all of a sudden women lean forward. They want to talk to you. They want to engage in conversation. So remember earlier when I was talking about how when I was younger, talking to women was a very uncomfortable thing. Women would get mad. They would, you know, yell. They'd get upset. They'd walk away, and I didn't understand why. I was exactly like most men before I learned this stuff. So here's the good news, ladies. Men can learn how to be emotionally grounded. They can learn how to open up to their right brain. They can learn how to communicate in the hidden internal language, in the indirect hidden way. They can learn how to speak that internal, mentally stimulating and emotionally fulfilling language. They can learn how to respect your boundaries. They can learn how to do the cat and mouse game where that drives you nuts and makes you want to make love to him. They can learn this stuff. Now here's the challenge. It's not easy. This whole video, you've understood it. And I already know that because I'm speaking your language. I'm talking about subjects and using words and language that you're like, Men are going, oh yeah, and here's the worst part. They probably think they understand it, not even knowing that they don't know that they don't know. And that's the biggest challenge with men. They don't know that they don't know. You try to, and you've tried to point it out to them. The problem is, you were trying to point all this stuff out from the right brain's perspective. When men come in the course, I have to meet them in the left brain. I have to give them scientific fact after scientific fact. I use so many diagrams and charts and science. Once their left brain is absolutely convinced, wow, this makes logical left brain linear sense, then they'll be willing to learn how to do the right brain way. You can't speak to them in that foreign right brain language and expect them to understand you, because they won't. And that's been the problem between men and women for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. One of the biggest challenges of the course for the first 7 to 8 years was figuring out, how do I teach this to a left brain male? How do I get him to understand what I'm saying in a way that he will finally begin to open up to the right brain? So teaching this to them, like, you can learn this logically and then, you know, spit it back out to him, and he'll be like, oh, and logically he'll understand what he thinks he understands, not realizing, you know, you have to learn it from the right brain. So the biggest part of the course is getting men open to their right brain, and then they can learn it and receive it from there, and then they will, number one, understand it in a right brain way, which is very important, because if you understand it logically, that means you literally didn't understand it. And then on top of it, he can now begin to do it and give it to you in the right brain way, to communicate, to express it, to process it in the right brain way. So now you guys are both on the same page. Alright, so now let's go back to the couple at the grocery store. So here's the deal. The left brain is the linear processor. Again, it means it goes in a line. Okay, an external line going from point A to point B. This is the male language. It was designed this way because of the caveman era, and also all the way up until probably 1920s, 1940s. The male, his job was to feed the family. He had to go out and hunt, fish, etc. every single day and find, because back, if you go back far enough, there were no grocery stores, there were no farms, there was nothing. You had to constantly hunt every day. So what that caused is it caused the left brain to be the linear brain, to go from point A to point B. That's a line. So you draw a line between point A and point B. In other words, they didn't have time to play grab ass. They didn't have time to play around, to goof around. Him and his buddies had to go out in the forest, go out into the desert, go out wherever, and they had to wait for an animal. Sometimes they would wait for a deer with a sharpened stick on a tree somewhere above a path and wait for the deer to walk underneath, and then they would jump down and hopefully they would stab it perfectly to where they could have some food for the children. If not, they went home and nobody had food. Everyone starved. So it was really, really important for the caveman and men even up until, again, the 1900s to stay on target, to stay focused so they could feed the family. That's what it was all about. Unfortunately, it's extremely unromantic. And that level of communication is literally, women, you once again, you're correct. It's surface level communication. There's no actual depth. There's no clarity. There's no true understanding. There's just a lot of yelling and screaming and cussing. So the right brain, the female's brain, because you guys basically cleaned and cooked and picked berries and etc. all day long, you got bored really fast. Whereas with men, it was exciting. It was like dangerous every single day. They got adrenaline rushes and they were constantly hunting, and it was very rewarding. Whereas women, you had to begin to develop a language that was very in-depth, very descriptive, using lots of adjectives and lots of adverbs. Now right there, I just lost men, because those two words terrify us, and I'll explain in the course why. So now the right brain is the five senses brain, okay? It's the emotional, creative, spiritual brain. The left brain is the logical processor. It processes through rules, structure, and organization. It's very good for business, it's very good for science, it's very good for math, etc. So here's the deal. The left brain is like the older IBM computer, okay? Now watch this, it's gonna make you laugh. So the left brain could only do one or two things. See, okay, the advantage of the old IBM linear processor is it's really fast. It goes from point A to point B, boom, right like that. So it's known to be really fast. The problem is you couldn't do more than one or two things at a time, otherwise it would shut down. So the right brain is the complete opposite. It's the circular, expansive processor, okay? So the mastery of the left brain is focusing on one little point, one little thing at a time, and it doesn't get distracted, okay? So it was really good for hunting, aiming a bow and arrow at a target. Like think of a target with all the circles, like it's really good at aiming at that little circle right in the middle. The problem with it, it blocks out all reality, okay? It's good for focusing on one thing at a time. Now ladies, have you ever, now the right brain is all about options and possibilities, about all these different things, right? And so here's what happens. So women can multitask because of this. It's a right brain function. You can talk to two people at the same time while you're thinking about this list of things you got to do in the back of your head, and then you're texting someone and carrying on a conversation. So here's the deal. When you start having multiple conversations on at the same time, it shuts men down. And generally what happens is the man goes into a trance, because the right brain is the vague and abstract language. By the way, the right brain is also the hypnosis language. The vague and abstract language is hypnosis. So without realizing it, you did two things. Number one, you overloaded his system, talking about multiple subjects. So just like the old IBM computers, remember where they would lock up and shut down and you had to shut them off for about 5 minutes or more, and then you had to turn it back on and reboot it for about 2 or 3 minutes? Well, that's the male brain. The female brain is absolutely like the Apple computer's processor. It's a circular, expansive processor. It processes through the five senses. It's about colors. It's about sounds. Remember when Apple came out, it was about art. It was about music. It was about right brain stuff. And everybody from the Android world or the IBM world, like, oh, well, you can't use those for business. Well, now business is becoming more about expression. It's more about social media. It's all about the right brain. The world is becoming right brain. All right, so here's the deal. These are two completely different processors, as different as the Apple computer processor versus the left linear external processor from the old IBM computer. These are two totally different processors. Now here's the deal. They literally speak two different languages, okay? I don't remember what the IBM, I want to call it the Linux processor or whatever. Funny, it says Linux, L-I-N-E. The Linux processor just goes in a line. So here's what I'm saying. How do I say this? Okay, number one, computers in real life literally use two different languages. So if you were to get an Apple and an IBM computer to communicate, you would have to connect a processor in the middle of them that translates the languages back and forth. Just like you do with the left brain and the right brain, okay? Or the man and the woman. So here is what happens. When a woman's in her left brain, he understands you because your left brain is exactly like his left brain. It's the same processor. You're in the linear external processor. It's very direct. It's to the point. And you say A and you mean A. Whereas the right brain, when you shift over, now you're left and right. So when you say A, you don't mean A. You mean something more deeper, more meaningful, B. Well, this is something that the male brain doesn't do, and when you do this, it infuriates him because he can't process it and he thinks you're playing games when you're not. Alright, so here's what happens. Number one, when you say A, but you really mean something deeper, more meaningful, B, he thinks you mean A. He's literally hearing A. And you're thinking, but wait a minute, but I crossed my arms and I put a frown on my face and my tone totally said, sure, you can go to the concert with your friends if you want to. Obviously, I was pissed off. I'm like, no, oh God, this is so much to unpack here. Alright, during the course Why Men Just Don't Get It, this will be a lot clearer because I cannot fit all this in 25-30 minutes. It's just not possible. So here's what happens. The left brain only processes words, and words are only 7% of communication. So the rest of the communication, 93%, is your body language. It's your tone, it's your tempo, it's your rhythm. It's the way you communicate. Now, when you use that phrase with men, it's the way I said it. They're looking at you like, what do you mean, the way? And they get really pissed off thinking you're being an idiot, but you're not. 93% of communication is right brain communication. The tone, the tempo, the rhythm. Men are missing out on 93% of communication, literally. So a woman could be sitting there with a really pissed off look on her face, a frown, her head going left to right, which says no, up and down means yes. So she could be left to right with her head, her pissed off face, her tone, and crossed arms and slightly turned away. Those are all saying no, 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 no. And her tone is like, sure, you can go if you want. He literally just heard, sure, you can go if you want. So he thinks he's all good, but when he comes home, you're pissed off. And he's like, I don't understand. You told me I could go. What are you pissed off about? And you're like, no, I didn't. I said don't go. And now women are going, wait a minute. You mean he literally took that literal? Yes, he took that literal. So here's the final kicker, at least for this video. So let's go back to the grocery store. So she said, now, ladies, when you're in your left brain, he understands you. But here's the problem. Women will shift over to their right brain. And now he's still stuck in his left brain. So you have more nerves in the corpus callosum. That's the bundle of nerves that connect the left side to the right side. Okay? So you can go left, right. It's like a super freeway. You have more connections, a lot more connections from the left side to the right. So you can go logical, then back to the right brain, the emotional creative brain, then back to the logic, then right, then left. He can't do that. He has to meditate or pray or do artwork or music or sing for about 10 or 15 minutes. And on an unconscious level, he slowly opens up to his right brain. He can't go left, right like you can. But in my course, Crack the Female Code, we teach them how to pick up the pace and how to develop that connection to become stronger and stronger and stronger to where he can start to go left, right like you do. And now he can not only keep up, but he can be on the same page. So here's the deal. The right brain processor, just like the Apple computer, it gives different meanings to the same words. So we speak English, so this is the weird part. We think we understand each other, but we don't. Well, we're both speaking English, yeah, but she's speaking the hidden internal English language. He's speaking the external logical language. So there's the right brain five senses language, and then there's logical external language, okay? So here's the deal. When she shifts over to her right brain, and says, let's say 60 or 80 or 100 words out of her right brain, unconsciously, he brings those same words over to his left brain processor and he filters them through the logical external filter, and it changes the meaning to everything you just said. The linear processor gives completely different meaning to the same words that you just used out of your right brain. So you said A, but he heard B, and he will argue to death saying, you said this and this means that. And you'll say, no, I said this and this means this. And the battle between the sexes begins, and all is fair in love and war. And let me tell you something right now. You guys will argue and argue to death. And this will repeat itself on different subjects, on different experiences, on different conversations for the rest of your life until you understand what's going on and how to fix it. Yes, you can absolutely fix this and have clarity in conversations, and he can learn how to give you the romantic, mentally stimulating, and emotionally fulfilling level of communication where you can connect on a deeper, more meaningful level emotionally, where he can begin to communicate in a way that you can understand him and feel him emotionally inside. So now you can get your mental connection and emotional connection, and you can finally receive not only your emotionally fulfilling experience, but you can become content within the relationship, because that's what you are missing. He gets, you know what, I'm not going to give it away, that'll be in the course. He gets contentment in another way, and he assumes that while he gets it, you are too, but you're not. And what happens is you honestly think he doesn't care about you, but he does. But after years and years of arguing and fighting, you both give up and you just start punishing each other. And that's what happens to relationships. But it doesn't have to. You can reverse this. You can begin to heal on a deep emotional level. For women, this course, it relieves you of a ton of emotional hurt and a ton of emotional pain, because it's all due to complete and total misunderstanding. And we finally have an answer for all of this. There's no reason to struggle and fight and argue for absolute no reason. That's what men and women are doing. We just don't understand each other. But now we can. We can learn how. On his side, it's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of work. He's going to have to want to do it. But there are real answers that we have. When I say we, I mean me. So get your butts in here. November 18th. It's coming up in about, I think we've got like 8 days left. Okay, quick announcement. I am going to add another weekend training. It's going to be one day. It's going to be on Saturday, December 2nd. I'm going to combine both the emotional grounding class and also the Why Men Just Don't Get It course. Go to my homepage and sign up right at the very top, the first section and the second section. Do it right now. Hey guys, I hope you learned something from this. When you take the course, we're going to go much more in depth, and it'll become a lot clearer, and a lot of emotions and pain that you have suffered your entire life dealing with the opposite sex will be healed, okay? God bless you guys. Remember, click subscribe, click the like button, make a comment, and if you want, go ahead and make a donation. There's a donation link, a PayPal link right there in the description box below the video. God bless you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.